I was 63 years old the night my son grabbed me by the arm so hard that my bones popped, in front of 180 people. During his own engagement ceremony for a second, the hall at the Sapphire Pavilion in Miami went dead silent. The string quartet stopped. The chandeliers hummed like they were holding their breath. People froze with champagne flutes midair, jaws half open, phones already tilted toward us, all waiting to see what would happen to the old woman who should have kept quiet. His fingers were still wrapped around my wrist when he leaned in and whispered through his teeth, "Mom, just sign the papers. Stop ruining my life." I could feel a bruise forming already. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Kitchen? Car? Bed? I want to know who is listening to this. And if you've ever been pressured by your own kids, hit that like button. You'll understand me more than you think. Now back to that hall. My wrist throbbed. The musicians pretended to retune their instruments. Someone coughed awkwardly. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God, is she okay?" And that's when I saw her. Sitting near the back, black suit, silver hair, sharp eyes. Detective Carla Ruiz, Financial Crimes Unit, Miami-Dade. She had been invited by my son's fiancé's father. That I recognized her because they used to interview her on TV about elder fraud cases. And the way she was staring at my son, it was like she had just connected 20 dots in a single second. My son, Daniel, still gripping my wrist, hissed louder, "You promised the house is mine, Mom. Everyone knows it. You can't back out tonight." A few guests pretended to look away. Others leaned closer, phones ready, drama dripping in the air. I took a long, steady breath, let go of the mic and quietly stepped off the stage. No yelling, no scene, just a calm exit. While 180 people watched my boy hold his fiancé's hand and smile like nothing had happened. The music started again, too fast, too loud. Someone tried to make a toast, someone else clapped. Life resumed. But something inside me didn't. That was the moment when years of small betrayals, small requests, small emotional tricks, finally lined up in a straight, terrifying line. People think families break in one night. They don't. They crack slowly down. My name is Isabella Moretti. I spent 35 years running a little Italian bakery in Coral Gables. 5 a.m. mornings, burnt fingers, flour everywhere, and not a single day off for 18 years. My husband, Marco, died 14 years ago. The bakery and the house were all I had left. Daniel was my only child. And just like every mother, I thought love meant giving, saying yes, helping, supporting, sacrificing. That I didn't realize what I was teaching him. That my limits didn't matter. That he deserved everything I built. That no was something I would never say. That day at the engagement party, I finally saw what I had created. But let me take you back, way back, because this story didn't start in that hall. It started the year Marco died. People think tragedies arrive loud. But mine came quietly. Marco didn't die in some dramatic movie moment. There was no ambulance screeching, no thunderstorm, no flashing lights. It was a Tuesday. I still remember the smell of warm cinnamon rolls drifting through the bakery, the mixer humming, the bell on the front door dinging every few minutes as customers walked in for their morning coffee. Marco was in the tiny office at the back, doing what he always did, tapping numbers into that old calculator like it owed him money. He looked up, winked at me and said, "Babe, one day we're gonna hire people so you don't have to wake up before the sun." He always said that. He said it like a promise. At 10:17 a.m. I heard the chair crash to the floor. I thought he dropped something. Or maybe he slipped. But when I walked into the office, he was collapsed next to the desk, eyes open but not seeing anything, one hand reaching toward me like he had tried to hold on to something. Anything. I screamed his name. My voice didn't even sound like mine. The bakery customers rushed in. Someone called 911. Someone kept telling me to breathe. But Marco never came back. He died before the ambulance even reached the hospital. Just like that, the man I'd spent 38 years waking up next to was gone. And suddenly the bakery wasn't a dream we built together anymore. It was a burden sitting on my chest. Bills piled up like snow. I had suppliers calling, rent due, ovens older than my son, and a mortgage on the house Marco adored. The house with the yellow shutters and the lemon tree he planted himself. I didn't have the luxury to grieve properly. Grief had to wait for after hours, after dishes were washed, after dough was kneaded, after customers went home. I would lock the bakery at night, lean against the glass door, and cry quietly into my apron because I didn't know how to live a life where Marco wasn't teasing me about my cinnamon buns being too tall. Daniel, who was 24 at the time, promised he would help. That he hugged me at the funeral and said, "Mom, I'll take care of everything now. Dad would want that." I believed him. Because mothers always believe the best in their children. That I didn't know that was the day the roles flipped. That while I was drowning in grief, Daniel was realizing just how much power he had over a mother who couldn't bear to lose anything else. That I didn't see the warning signs then. But looking back, that was the beginning of the slow unraveling, the beginning of the tiny requests turning into big demands, the beginning of him thinking the bakery, the house, my future, belonged to him. That first year after Marco's death, I held the bakery together with flour-covered hands and pure stubbornness. And I didn't know it yet, but Daniel was already learning how far he could push me. I swear. The first time my son messed up, it didn't even feel like a mistake. It felt like a tiny crack in a wall I didn't know was about to collapse. It was around 9 p.m. I just closed up the bakery, my back aching like someone had twisted it for fun. I walked in, kicked off my shoes, and saw him sitting on the couch, head in his hands. That alone was enough to make my heart drop. He used to run to the door when I came home, but now he didn't even look up. "Baby, what happened?" I whispered. He swallowed hard. "Mom, I just need a little help. Just this once. Just this once." Those were the magic words every mother falls for. That I sat beside him. "How much?" He said the number so softly I almost thought I misheard until he added, "I'll pay you back in 2 weeks. I promise." And you know what? I didn't even question it. Didn't ask where the money went. Didn't ask why he looked guilty as sin. Didn't ask why his hands were shaking. I just reached for my old biscuit tin, the one I hid behind the flour sacks. Why emergency money. Why, what if something happens to us money. When I gave it to him, he hugged me so tight I almost cried. Not because of the hug, because he felt like a stranger holding me. There was a distance in him. Something I couldn't name yet. But the worst part? The next morning when I reached for the tin again just to check, it was empty. Completely empty. He hadn't taken a little. He'd taken everything. And for the first time the bakery felt colder. My home felt heavier. And the sun I'd raised with my whole chest felt just a little bit further away. This was just the beginning. And I had no idea how deep this hole was going to get. If that first slip was a crack, the years that followed were the slow crumble. I kept pretending not to see it. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. People don't just wake up one day and become someone you don't recognize. They shift, inch by inch, while you keep telling yourself, "He's just stressed, he's just young, he's just figuring life out." And every time he said, "Mom, I just need a little help," I opened my hands wider, while he opened his less and less. Bills he promised he'd pay next month. Things he bought on sale that magically cost full price. Jobs he left after 2 weeks because people there don't respect me. Late night calls from unknown numbers, friends I'd never seen before, but who acted like they lived in my house. And the worst part? The shame in his eyes slowly faded away, like he got comfortable disappointing me. I'd be baking at 5 a.m., covered in flour, hands numb, and he'd stroll out of his room at 11 like the world owed him the morning. He'd say, "You should wake me up, Mom." Like he wasn't a grown man, like I was the reason he couldn't stay on track. But I never shouted. Not once. I didn't have the heart. Because every time he failed it felt like I had failed. There were nights I'd sit alone in the bakery, lights off, staring at my hands, thinking about the boy who used to run to me after school with crayon drawings. The boy who cried when he lost a pencil. The boy who kissed my cheek when I made biryani extra spicy. Where did he go? And who was this man walking around with his face? But you know what hurt most? The day he stopped saying thank you. The day he started acting like my help was not kindness, but a duty. Like I owed him my savings. My sleep. My sanity. And I kept giving and giving and giving, not knowing he was getting bolder every year. Not knowing he was slowly learning how to bend my love until it snapped. Not knowing, this wasn't even the real storm. The real storm entered my house wearing lipstick and a polite smile. And she brought chaos with her. I'll be honest. The first time she walked into my house I actually thought, "Oh, maybe this is the girl who'll bring my son back to himself." Yeah, joke's on me. She came in wearing this soft pink dress, hair done perfectly, smile so sweet it almost felt rehearsed. The kind of smile that looks kind, until you look into the eyes and realize there's nothing warm in there. My son introduced her like he just brought home a trophy. "Mom, this is Alina." I wiped my hands on my apron and reached out. Welcome, Beta.
Sit, sit.
I'll bring tea. She didn't sit. She didn't smile back. Just looked around the house like she was checking the price tags. Her eyes landed on the old wooden shelf my husband built with his bare hands. She tilted her head, like she was debating whether it was vintage or trash. Then she said it. The first red flag. The one I ignored because mothers always ignore the first warning. Your house is cozy, she said. But the way she said cozy felt like someone calling you sweet right before they insult your outfit. My son didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too busy breathing around her like she was oxygen. I served tea. She didn't touch it. Just kept scrolling on her phone while saying, I'm not really a tea person. That wasn't the problem. The problem was, she said it without even looking at me. And then, just when I tried to ask her about her job, her family, her studies, something normal, she looked at my son and said, Baby, can we go? I have to meet Mom. She really wants to talk about property stuff. Property. I swear that word hit me like a slap. My son instantly stood up. Didn't even wait for me to finish speaking, didn't finish his tea, didn't ask if I needed anything, just grabbed his keys like a puppy following a whistle. And as she walked out, she paused at the door, looked back, gave me a smile that wasn't a smile and said, Don't worry, Auntie. We'll fix all this soon. All this. My home. My life's work. My memories. We'll fix all this. Like my entire existence was outdated furniture. That was the day I realized something terrifying. My son wasn't drifting away by accident. Someone was pulling him, and she had a very specific plan. The pressure didn't start with a fight. It started with suggestions, soft ones, polite ones, the kind that sound harmless until you realize they were knives wrapped in compliment paper. It was a Sunday morning. I was kneading dough in the kitchen when my son walked in, rubbing his neck like he was nervous. I looked at him and instantly felt that old mother's instinct, something's coming. Mom, can we talk for a second? He said. My hands froze. I wiped them on my apron and sat down. Of course, baby. What's wrong? He hesitated. And when my son hesitates, it's never good. So, Alina's mom was saying something, he started. Nothing serious. Just an idea. An idea. Yeah, right. She thinks it'd be smarter if we, organized the property documents. I felt a strange chill climb my spine. What documents? I asked, even though I already knew. He looked everywhere except my face. The house, Mom. She thinks we should transfer it now, just to avoid complications later. I almost laughed. Complications? Who creates complications before they even happen? I waited for him to realize how absurd it was, but instead he kept going. Mom, think about it. He insisted. It'll be easier for us when we're married. You won't have to deal with paperwork. And it's not like you're going anywhere. I swear my fingers went cold. You want me to put the house in your name? I asked quietly. He didn't even blink. Yeah, why not? It's basically mine anyway. Basically his. My husband's last gift. The place where I raised him. The roof I paid for with sleepless nights and burned hands. Who told you this? I whispered. He shifted again. Alina's mom. She just wants us to be secure. Secure? They wanted security, but from what? From me. Before I could say a single word, he added, too quickly, too practiced. Mom, don't make this into a drama. It's a simple thing. Everyone does it. Everyone does it. That line I'll never forget. I realized that day. This wasn't just a suggestion. It wasn't even a request. This was a plan. A slow, steady 1.1 conversation at a time. 1 guilt trip at a time. 1 manipulation at a time. And for the first time in years, I saw something in my son's eyes that didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. To them. Whatever they'd whispered into him. And just when I thought this was the low point, the engagement day arrived. And trust me, that's where everything truly exploded. The morning of the engagement felt off. You know that strange heaviness in the air when a storm is coming? Yeah. That. I woke up early, tried to force myself into the usual routine: tea, breakfast, checking the dough, but everything felt like my hands were moving underwater. And my son barely spoke to me, just kept pacing around, checking his phone like it held his entire future. Every time I tried talking, he'd mumble, "Not now, Mom, please. Please." Like I was bothering him in my own house. I told myself to breathe. It's his engagement day. Stress happens. People get weird. But things kept piling up. Alina didn't come inside when they arrived to pick him up. She sat in the car, sunglasses on, like she was too important to step into my home. My son rushed out without even saying goodbye. Her mother hugged me like she was comforting someone at a funeral, long tight, almost pitying. I hope everything goes smoothly today, she whispered. Hope? Why was hope needed? The venue. When I walked in, the hall felt ice cold. Not temperature, energy. People looked at me. Strangely, like they'd heard something, like they were waiting. For what? I didn't know yet that Alina's family moved around like they owned the place. Her mother kept whispering to guests. Every time I got near, they stopped talking. And then, I saw him, Detective Ruiz. A quiet man. A close friend of my husband. He was there with his wife, but his eyes were on me, studying me. Like he knew something I didn't. He walked over, leaned in and said softly, "Stay close to me today. Just trust me." I froze. What do you mean? He didn't answer. Just gave me this look. A warning wrapped in concern. My heart was pounding in my ears now. And then the biggest sign of all, when they brought me on stage for the ring ceremony, my son didn't look happy. He looked tense, like someone had told him exactly what to do, and exactly what to say. He held my hand and whispered, "Mom, please. Don't argue today." Argue? About what? Why would I argue at my own son's engagement? Something was coming. Something they thought I wouldn't be prepared for. But they were wrong. I might have been tired, but I wasn't blind, and that storm, it was about to hit in the next few minutes. The band had barely started playing when the costs kept piling up. The decorations, the lighting, the once-in-a-lifetime champagne tower. It all felt like a tidal wave of demands, each one carefully designed to leave me gasping. And yet I paid. Every bill, every tip, every last over-the-top detail. Because that was what mothers did, right? We made the impossible possible, even if it swallowed us whole. Kelly had this way of looking at me that made it feel like saying no wasn't an option. Her smile was engineered to disarm me, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and expectation. I kept thinking about Frank. He would have reminded me to set limits, to draw lines, to protect the life we had built together. But he wasn't there. And so I paid. The rehearsal dinner had been the first real warning. I noticed it in the subtle glances exchanged between Kelly and Travis's family. The way they whispered about my finances like I wasn't in the room. I could feel it, the silent judgment. And yet, I justified every decision. It's her day, I told myself. She deserves the world. But deep down, there was a gnawing sense that something was shifting, that the pendulum of gratitude had already swung. And I hadn't noticed that by the week of the wedding, I was exhausted. My legs ached from pacing the penthouse as I planned, replanned, and triple-checked every detail. The delivery schedules, the last-minute seating changes, the floral arrangements. I handled it all. I barely slept, barely ate, but I convinced myself it was worth it. Kelly would have her perfect day, and I would quietly fade into the background, smiling, invisible, unnoticed. Then came the moment in the hallway outside the ballroom, before the slap, when I realized that all those years of working extra shifts, of sacrificing vacations, of quietly covering debts, of shielding her from the consequences of her choices, it had led to this confrontation, this public spectacle. My pulse quickened not out of fear, but out of recognition. I had given too much. And yet, in that moment, a strange calm settled over me. Judge Graves' presence was a comfort I didn't expect. She didn't speak loudly, didn't lecture. She simply acknowledged the reality of what had just happened. The invisible injuries no one else could see. And somehow that acknowledgement gave me a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. I was no longer just a mother trying to protect her child. I was a woman standing in her own right, with a life, a home, and a future that belonged solely to her. Walking into that reception hall again, I saw the full impact. Guests whispered, some glanced away, uncomfortable. Others couldn't stop watching, phones raised, recording the drama unfolding in real time. But I was unshaken. The penthouse, the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, it all crystallized into one sharp truth. No one could take that from me. Not Kelly. Not anyone. And then I saw Travis, standing beside her, confusion etched into his face. He looked between us like he had just stepped onto a stage he hadn't auditioned for. His eyes were pleading, but I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The penthouse wasn't just property, It was a symbol. A symbol that love, even parental love, could be taken too far. And that sometimes saying no was the only way to protect yourself. As the first chord of the band's music started again, louder, more insistent, I took a deep breath. The night was far from over, but I had already reclaimed something vital. My dignity, my space, my future. And in that moment, as glasses clinked uncertainly and whispered conversations hummed through the air, I realized that no amount of money, no amount of pleading, no amount of love could ever replace the power of standing firm. The weeks following the wedding had been tense. Kelly had tried to slip back into her old habits: calls for money, hints about the penthouse, little guilt trips disguised as concern. But Margaret didn't flinch. She had learned to recognize the patterns, to see through the charm in the pleading. One afternoon, Kelly showed up at the penthouse, her face flushed, her hands twisting nervously. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked, her voice small, almost fragile. Margaret didn't answer immediately. She gestured for Kelly to sit, and they faced each other across the living room, the light from the bay casting sharp shadows between them. Kelly's first words tumbled out in a rush. I know I went too far. I shouldn't have at the wedding. And all those times with money, I see it now. I was selfish and I hurt you. I never wanted to. I didn't understand." Margaret listened, her heart steady. She could feel the shift in Kelly's energy, the difference between excuses and true accountability. This was new. This was genuine. Margaret let the silence stretch, letting the weight of her daughter's words sink in. Finally, she spoke. "Kelly, I love you. I always will. But love doesn't mean giving up your life, your home, your dignity. You've seen what happens when boundaries aren't respected. You've seen what it costs me to bend too far." Kelly nodded, tears brimming. "I get it now. I really do. I don't want to take advantage anymore. I want to do better, to be responsible. And I don't want to fight with you anymore." Margaret felt a mixture of relief and caution. She knew reconciliation wasn't automatic. Trust had to be rebuilt. But she also recognized that Kelly's admission was real, and that was the first step. "Then let's start over," Margaret said softly. "Not as me giving and you taking, but as mother and daughter, with honesty and respect. We can rebuild from there, if you're willing to work for it." Kelly reached out and took her mother's hand, holding it tightly. "I am, Mom. I promise I am." And in that moment, Margaret realized something profound. Love could exist without sacrifice that destroyed you. Boundaries didn't push people away. They allowed real relationships to grow. Kelly's apology didn't erase the past, but it opened a door to a future where they could finally be equals, not debtor and creditor, not guilt and rescuer, but mother and daughter standing together, with clarity, honesty, and respect. Margaret let herself feel the small spark of hope that had been buried under decades of worry and debt. For the first time in years, she saw the possibility of a relationship rebuilt on truth rather than expectation. And it felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. After that conversation, Margaret felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in decades. The penthouse, once a battleground of entitlement and expectation, now felt like a sanctuary. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every painting she had hung herself was a reminder of her journey, of sacrifice, perseverance, and finally self-respect. Kelly and Travis had begun to take responsibility for their own lives. Bills were paid on time, rent was no longer an emergency, and the constant phone calls asking for money ceased. Margaret still offered advice when asked, but it was no longer her job to solve every problem. She could love without losing herself. Margaret began spending more time on herself. She traveled to places she and Frank had once dreamed about, painting the Gulf Coast and the mountains in vibrant colors, exploring small towns and reconnecting with friends she had neglected. The penthouse became her retreat, a place where she could breathe, think, and create without interruption. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the bay reflected gold and pink hues, Margaret sat on the balcony with a cup of tea. She thought of the path that had led her here. The decades of hard work, the sleepless nights, the bills covered, the debts forgiven, the love given unconditionally. All of it had built more than a home. It had built resilience, wisdom, and freedom. Kelly stopped by occasionally, and their relationship had changed. There was still awkwardness, a cautious distance at first, but it was filled with sincerity. They laughed together, talked honestly about mistakes, and slowly, a new bond emerged. One based not on obligation, guilt, or entitlement, but on mutual respect and genuine care. Margaret reflected on the past and realized she had finally learned the most important lesson of her life. Boundaries are not barriers, they are protection. They safeguard your dignity, your peace, and your future. Love without boundaries can drain you. Love with them can sustain both the giver and the receiver. As night fell over Tampa Bay, Margaret sipped her tea, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She had fought for herself in silence for decades, and now the fight was over. The penthouse was not just a building. It was proof that she could claim her life, stand firm, and still love deeply. And in that quiet, golden moment, Margaret smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. If you walked beside me through this darkness, don't let go now. Subscribe. The next shadow already knows your name.